Very soft, there was no telling if it was because she was utterly furious or because she was trying to restrain herself. Hecarim did not know, and could only hope it was the latter. I've heard it before, but he really is a crude man. He's absolutely disgusting. The other two replied quietly, making no attempt to hide their displeasure. It was only natural that Foresight would think that way. With a woman like Imina as their companion, there was no way they could tolerate Aria's actions. Aside from Aria himself, the rest of his team was all female, and they were all elves. Imina and the other team members would not have been revolted by him if that was all. However, there was a reason why they had the unanimous and unreserved opinion that Aria was a piece of disgusting filth. The elf girls were minimally equipped with crudely made gear. In addition, their short-cut hair exposed their long elven ears, which had been cut in half at the middle. The reason why Aria's team members were like this was because they were all elven slaves from the slain theocracy. The previous system of slavery in the Empire had undergone a great reform under the previous emperor. They were still slaves in name, but their situation was completely different. However, just like the demi-humans in the arena, the conditions of some slaves had not been improved. The elf slaves Aria had in tow belonged to that type. The three nations of the Baharuth Empire, the Riestai's kingdom, and the slain theocracy were almost all human, and they discriminated more heavily against other races than the other surrounding nations. Thus, even humanoid species, like half-elves and elves, had a hard time living in these countries. Only the dwarves were an exception. The Azalisian mountain range that stood between the kingdom and the empire contained a dwarven kingdom, and due to the trading relationship the empire had with the dwarves, they were assured of protection under the law. I feel sorry for the elves. However, we should not try to save them now. Imina sighed heavily. She understood that fact in her head. Her heart was simply taking longer to catch up. Let's go. Imina moved to the head of the group after that quiet reply, and the others quickened their pace so as not to fall behind. Then, their eyes all went wide in surprise. There were two large covered carriages waiting at the place where the butler had taken them, which would be heading for the ruins. There was also a group of people helping to load their luggage onto the carriages. Those ought to be the adventurers that the butler mentioned, because the metal plates around their necks glinted with a golden light. However, what surprised them was not the adventurers, but the horses pulling the carriages. Sleipners, someone exclaimed in surprise. The 8-legged Sleipners were larger than an average horse and possessed excellent physical strength, stamina, and mobility. Some people considered them to be the ideal creature for land travel. Naturally, they commanded a startling price as well. Most nobles could not afford a mount that cost 5 times as much as a warhorse. Yet, there were two two-horse carriages before them, for a total of 4 Sleipners. Their employer must have considered the risk of losing them during adventuring, and so his determination was very admirable. Or could it be he felt that they would unearth so much treasure that only Sleipners would be able to move them? Everyone was probably thinking the same thing. The sound of swallowing came from somewhere. Please use these carriages. Your rations and other supplies are inside the vehicle compartment. In addition, we have hired adventurers to protect the carriage and your campsite. According to their contract, they cannot enter the ruins, so please keep that in mind. Hecarim realized that there was something which needed to be resolved right away, and so he left his companions and ran to Gringam. Pardon me, Gringam, I need to discuss something with you. What troubles thee that thou seekest my counsel? When it comes to allocating carriages, could you put us separately from Tenbo? Ah, I see. Thy concerns are known to me, thou fearest for that young lady, In that case, we shall travel with Tenbo. Sorry and thanks. You're a big help. Pay it no heed, in this endeavor, we are comrades. A quarrel even before reaching the ruins would be a thorny matter, and I too am. Are you sure we'll be fine with these puny gold-ranked adventurers? I don't want to come back to a wrecked camp or wake up to find myself sharing it with monsters. A great shout came with all the force of a fireball. Two people stared at each other, and tensions were running high. Arya expressed his dissatisfaction to the butler, but he did not make any attempt to lower she volume. The adventurers stopped moving their luggage, as though time had stopped. When one looked up, one could see higher realms ahead. Whether or not one could reach those heights remained to be seen. Yet, some people continued marching toward their goal, one step at a time, and Arya's statement was very displeasing to those people. They were engaged in a struggle to prove their strength, and once their competency was called into question, especially if their client doubted their ability, it would affect future tasks that they were assigned. In that case, they had to prove their worth in a simple and quick fashion. This man, whose words could not be tolerated by either the adventurers or the workers, did not know how to consider things from the perspective of others. Therefore, he was virtually unaffected by the foul mood in the air, and continued babbling to himself. "No, I do understand that they're fit to handle our luggage. I'm simply concerned that they won't be able to help us get rid of threats. Give me a break. What good does it do to ruin the mood? Granted, they're here for work, so they should be able to bear with it a little, but still. Level-wise, all the worker teams here were on par with mithril-ranked adventurers, which meant that they were better than these adventurers. However, some things ought not to be said out loud. Someone, anyone, punch him to shut him up." Several of the workers had evil glints in their eyes, and they were exchanging glances. Hecarim hurriedly ran over to Imina. No matter what happened, he could not let her draw her blade. However, the person who came to stop this was not a worker. "You must be Uzrath Salma, HM? I assure you that there will be no problems." "Are you saying that on the assumption that we're helping too?" "I could understand it, in that case." "No. That is because there will be a stronger individual traveling with you, Momon-san." A warrior in full plate armor poked his helmeted head out from one of the carriages, as though in response to the butler's icy tones. He had probably been in the middle of moving luggage onto the carriage. "Allow me to introduce you to the adamantite-ranked adventurer team of 2, Momon-san of Darkness, and his teammate Nabe. The 2 of them will travel with you and defend your campsite. I trust you will be able to accept that?" The air changed again. The pinnacle of adventurers and workers, those who handled this sort of work, now stood before them. None of the workers could speak in the face of this proof of absolute strength. The adventurers regained their good spirits as they saw the workers' naked reaction to the most highly placed of all adventurers, and they went back to their work. A man who looked like the adventurer team's leader smiled, and then spoke to the dark warrior. "We'll handle the rest. Momon-san, would you mind interacting with the workers? Being that you're our leader, I hope that you will discuss our security posture with the workers." "All right. As long as your team agrees, I'll take on this task, despite my lack of ability. However, I believe you should be the ones to take charge of security. After all, you're more numerous, so it would be more convenient to follow your lead instead." "Ah, no. What do you mean by a lack of ability? You're being too humble. Besides, how could we disregard the great Momon-san? No, I insist that you be in charge of security. Then, I'll be counting on you to skillfully command us." "Nabe." Momon chuckled softly, and then lightly descended from the cabin. An astoundingly beautiful woman followed behind him. When a beautiful woman showed herself, people would sometimes make a commotion out of shock. However, once her looks exceeded a certain threshold, said people would not even be able to do that much. In the face of true beauty, all people could do was allow their gazes to be stolen away. Hecarim, he's Rober, I'm thinking the same thing too. We saw him before, at the North Market. That man is Momon of Darkness, and his sole companion. When you look at his mighty form, perhaps the rumors of him beating the Gigant Basilisk were not so exaggerated after all." "Giga, is what you say really true?" "So I heard. In addition, I heard Gringam say that he took out a difficulty 200 demon in one blow." "That can't possibly be real. A difficulty of 200 isn't in the realm of possibility for a human being. Could it be that you misheard 100 as 200? Even 100 would be quite amazing. But how shall I put this? After seeing his words and actions, I feel like it's the truth." He had grasped Momon's character from his brief interaction with the leader of the gold-ranked adventurers. He felt that the man exuded the dignity and charisma befitting an adamantite-ranked adventurer, which naturally endeared others to him. Before we mingle, I have a question to ask you. His voice was soft, yet its rich tones allowed everyone to feel his heroic spirit through his armor. Why are you going to the ruins? I know you've been hired. But you're not like adventurers, who find it difficult to refuse a strongly worded request. Why would you, whose actions are not bound, choose to accept this assignment? What drives you to do such a thing? The workers looked at each other. They hesitated over who should answer, and in the end, it was someone from Palpetra's team who spoke up. For money, of course. It was a perfect answer, there was no better reason than that. The workers had not hesitated over what answer they should have given, and Momon should have expected such a matter-of-fact reply from them. The fact that he had still asked the question anyway left them at a loss as to his true intentions. After seeing the workers murmur their agreement, Momon continued asking, that is to say, if your client pays you a great deal of money, it's worth paying with your lives? Indeed. Our client offered us recompense that satisfied us. In addition, there might be a further prize depending on what we find within the ruins. It is my contention that such largesse warrants the risk of our lives. That answer came from Gringam. I see, so this is what you have all decided then? I understand. Please forgive me for asking such a worthless question. Such a trifling matter requires no apology, do not allow it to weigh upon my heart. Hayahia, well, if you've finished asking, might I ask a question in turn? Please do, old sir. I wish to verify a rumor I've heard. They say your strength is extraordinary. May I see if those rumors are factual? I see, seeing is believing, after all. Of course you may. I shall show you my might if it means you will accept our protection. Then, how shall I demonstrate my power? The best way is to spar with someone else, of course. All eyes gathered on, and of course, I will be the one to do the sparring, that's right me. What? You, old sir? My apologies, but I am not accustomed to holding back. I do not wish to harm you, yet I have no confidence in restraining myself, do you mind? Hiya. That's adamantite for you. Not a thought given to the fact that I might hurt you instead. A quiet chuckle came from under the helmet. But of course, old sir. This is the difference in our respective strengths. I am strong, stronger than any of you. That is why I can bear the name of adamantite. Despite his extraordinary arrogance and sense of superiority, it did not displease those who saw it. This must be the presence of the man called Momon. His statement overflowed with persuasive power in addition to a frightening puissance that could slay countless foes. How incredible. Yes, he's just too amazing. The feverish murmurs rose and fell. Many women adored strong men. In terms of respect, many men were fascinated by strong men. They were like moths mesmerized by a flame, and for those who lived in a world of blood and steel, great power was the flame in question. They could not tear themselves away from the charm that bound them, even though they knew that they would be immolated if they misjudged their distance. Hayahia. I doubt anyone will doubt that you're adamantite ranked now. Still, speaking of which, it's rare that we get a chance like this, so I'd like to get a few pointers from you. The carriages here will get in the way, so could I borrow that patch of empty ground, Butler Dono? After receiving permission, Palpetra led everyone to the courtyard. It was not just the workers who followed him, but even the adventurers and Butler as well. Given the revered elder's skills, there's probably no way he can do it. That man seems very strong. Rather than say he is strong, it would be better so say that the divide between them is precipitous. Even the two adamantite-ranked adventurer teams in the Empire would hardly qualify as superhuman. You have a point there. Silver Canary's members have very exotic professions, so they each have strange skills, but their overall abilities fall below people with basic jobs. And I hear that the members of 8 Ripples derive their strength from their numbers and teamwork. Silver Canary was led by a heroic bard, and its members all had exotic vocations. 8 Ripples was a 9-man team. Due to their numbers, some said that their strength was not yet adamantite level, but others also said that as long as they worked together to focus on a problem, they could handle problems which even other adamantite-ranked adventurers could not tackle. However, whether or not those 2 teams qualified as the secret weapons of the human race, those who could make the impossible possible, the strongest entities, adamantite, remained in doubt. Hecarim said all that after hearing his teammates whisper from behind him. The 3 of them were not the only ones doing so. If one listened carefully, one could hear the rest of them discussing various topics. The most repeated question was how long Palpetra could hold out. Nobody here felt that he could beat Momon, because even after their brief time together, everyone had acknowledged that the aura around Momon was most fitting of an adamantite-ranked adventurer. Hecarim thought as he walked, and just then, someone came to his side. After hearing the noise of metal armor, there was no need to ask who it was. Gringam, how do you think their fight will turn out? While saying so might upset the revered elder, there is no doubt that Momon will win. Beyond that is the question of how long the revered elder will endure. Wilt thou not queue behind the revered elder? As if, give me a break. How about you? Permit me to humbly refuse. Witnessing a superhuman warrior in action is more than enough for myself. Although, I would not object to a few lessons on swordsmanship from him during the course of our journey. Same here, Momon and Palpetra stood before the 2 of them in the courtyard, maintaining a distance between and looking at each other. Palpetra's eyes were not those of an ordinary old man. They were those of a veteran campaigner. The aura around him had hardened into needle-like killing intent, and the air held no trace of this being just a regular old spar. Everyone present broke out in a cold sweat, their hearts filled with uneasiness. Hey, this is pretty bad, right? The old man's serious. Beside him, Gringam had reverted to his original way of speaking. Well, his opponent's an adamantite-ranked adventurer, so he's got no choice but to be serious. Still, Hecarim shifted his eyes towards the dark warrior standing off against the old man. Having just spoken those words, he immediately drew a breath. He could not sense anything from Momon. His arms drooped down, he looked completely unguarded, and he did not look like he was about to fight a duel of blades. He was as composed as an adult looking at a child holding a sword. Amazing, he's not reacting even in the face of such powerful bloodlust. There's no way he couldn't have sensed his opponent's killing intent. So this is what the supreme perfection of warriorhood looks like. In other words, the supreme perfection of emptiness. Is this what they call no heart? Or the realm of clouds and water? He's so calm despite the difference in their weapons. He must be extremely confident in his skills. I want to throw myself down before him in awe. TL note, both of these are terms from Buddhist philosophy. No heart refers to a lack of obstructive thoughts, while clouds and water refers to moving and flowing freely. Palpetra was holding a magic item whose point was made from a whittled-down dragon's fang. In contrast, Momon held a staff he had borrowed from one of the adventurers. It did not look magical in any way. Magic weapons had all sorts of special effects, from improved sharpness, improving their wielder's abilities to doing additional damage and so on. Right now, Palpetra had an overwhelming advantage in terms of armament. No, that's probably not it. It's true when it comes to weapons, but the enchantments on Momon-san's armor ought to be stronger than the old man's. His other magic items ought to be of a higher standard too. Overall, I'd say they're either pretty close or Momon-san has the advantage. Art thou not too hasty in thine judgment? Hast thou not heard that the magic items the revered elder carries are worth more than an adamantite-ranked adventurer's panoply? The revered elder has completed countless jobs over the years. One could say he was the best-paid man in the empire. No, wait. Thou shouldst calm thyself. As the 2 of them argued, the ever-rising urge battle lust led to the beginning of the duel. Then, shall I go first? There's more pressing work to be done after this. Don't push yourself too hard, come at me in a more relaxed way, old sir. Without letting Momon finish, Palpetra instantly stepped in with a smoothness speed and power that an 80-year-old man should not have possessed. In contrast, Momon had not even raised the staff in his hand. Dragon Fang thrust. Hecarin's eyes went wide as he saw Palpetra open with a martial art, without the slightest bit of hesitation. The technique made his spear's shaft curve, allowing him to stab twice, like a dragon's fang. In addition, it could deal elemental damage on top of that. This was a development of the martial art, thrust, being a technique which Palpetra had apparently developed over 40 years ago, and it had become widely known due to its excellent balance. Many other warriors had learned that move up till this date. And among the Dragon Fang thrusts, Palpetra had chosen the Blue Dragon Fang thrust, with the additional effect of dealing electrical damage. What's that old coot thinking? We might have healing magic on hand, but nobody would use a move like that under normal circumstances. A move like that, which could inflict electrical damage on the merest graze, was ideal for use against an armored opponent. Palpetra's use of that technique was a sign of how deadly serious he was. However, Momon easily avoided that strike, which would have otherwise been the bane of someone in armor. Even in his jet-black full-plate armor, his movements were as graceful as a feather. More astounding was the fact that he had not leapt away, but remained in place and dodged it while hardly moving at all. That's impossible. What kind of dexterity and motion-tracking vision is that? Gale acceleration. Palpetra continued using his martial arts. You've gone too far, old man. Has your brain gone senile too? Dragon Fang thrust. He used the same move from before upon Momon again. Snow-white freezing vapors shrouded the spear's tip. It was the White Dragon Fang thrust. That lightning-fast series of 4 attacks, a great commotion rose from the onlookers. That was only to be expected. After all, not a single one of those 4 attacks had managed to so much as touch Momon's armor. Palpetra leapt back. His forehead was beaded with sweat. He was not exhausted from attacking, but the mental strain of wielding his spear on deadly ground had been too much for him. He's incredible. He's stronger than Hecarin. But of course, Archie. Don't compare me to him. He's what they call the highest level adventurer, the peak of everything. That's the power of an adamantite-ranked adventurer. Now then, I believe it is my turn next. Momon slowly raised his staff into a middle stance. In contrast, Palpetra took the spear he had been clutching and rested it on his shoulders. That was not a fighting stance, it was the posture of a man who had lost the will to fight, who had given up the battle. That was incredible. I give up. My skills can't even land a scratch on you, much less beat you. Is that so? Oh, gasps of "oh" rose from the people watching by the side as Palpetra announced his surrender. It was a truly overwhelming display. They had all seen with their own eyes a difference like the one between children and adults. The crowd debated excitedly, discussing what school his dodging footwork hailed from and so on, sharing the emotions within their hearts. Hecarin paid them no heed and took Gringam with him as they went over to Palpetra, who was wiping his sweat off as he spoke with Momon. Is it over, old sir? Momon's tone and the air around him had turned gentle. Don't tell me you're about to show your true power now? Hayayahia, you speak quite harshly to an old man. That was my true power just now. What you saw was the full extent of my abilities, Momondano. Ah, forgive me. I was being rude. Please don't apologize. That would fill me with shame also. You don't have to be so stiff when talking to me, because our worth isn't measured in our years, but in how skilled we are. Having a matchless man of power like yourself defer to me makes me feel a little itchy. I see, then I shall dispense with the formalities, however reluctantly. That said, I'm not quite satisfied with ending things here. If we do get another chance, I'd like to make the first move instead. Now then, I still have to help move the luggage into the carriage. I'll see you later. Moving luggage is a trivial task, you could hand it to someone else, right? Surely this can't be your job. I don't think so. No matter what position I may hold, I must still do the job assigned to me. With those words, Momon returned to the carriage, trailed by that beautiful girl. The two people who met them in passing watched them leave. They looked at his mighty back. Hyaya, judging by your expressions, you seem to have something you want to ask. Revered elder, what did thou think of that exchange? His wrinkled face twisted. It looked like a bitter smile, and at the same time like something else. That man is very strong. No, as an adamantite-ranked adventurer, strength comes with the territory, but I honestly had not expected him to be that powerful. From the instant I faced him, I had the feeling that every blow I struck would be blocked. Hecarim felt the same way. He had also felt that any attack he launched would have been easily blocked and promptly countered by the man called Momon. And even if everything had gone according to plan, he could imagine how his strikes would have been deflected by that armor. Palpetra had faced him head-on, so surely he must have felt that even more intensely. So that is an adamantite-ranked adventurer. Indeed. That is an adamantite-ranked adventurer, one who belongs to a realm which only those favored by the heavens may dare to tread. Ah, what a matchless beauty, a pinnacle to which we cannot hope to aspire, say, you must have been happy just to glimpse that peak, no? Indeed. Watching from the sidelines, I could see thy movements clearly. If I was facing him in person, surely I would not have been able to observe his skills so calmly. Personally, while this may offend thee, revered elder, I would have very much liked to see Momondano's strength as he went from the defense to the offense. That's impossible. Momondano had no intention of attacking me at all. I couldn't sense any fighting spirit from him. It was probably like he said, he sucks at holding back. He must have felt that if he had actually struck at me, he could have easily taken my life. If that were the case, then one could say Momon's thinking was very arrogant. That was because the old man, Palpetra, was a skilled warrior, yet Momon had scorned him without so much as looking at his moves. However, it was because he could do such a thing that he could be called an adamantite-ranked adventurer. It can't be helped, the difference between his strength and mine is far too great. At first, I was unhappy too, but then he ended up taking the defense and evading all my strikes. What could I say after that? That was what it meant to be strong. He had used a weapon which he was not familiar with, whose balance and weight were completely different from what he normally used, to show how confident he was. That was the difference between the two of them. Palpetra whined, "Ah, so tired," then turned his back on them and left. Naturally, he was headed for the carriage. As he watched Palpetra leave, Hecarim heard a quiet grumble. Even when I was young, I could not step into that domain. So that's adamantite, what an unattainable peak. Palpetra's back shrunk in his eyes. In contrast, Momon's back seemed massive and oppressive. That is the highest rank, that of adamantite. Yes. It's truly amazing. Nobody around them could dispute their odd words. Part 2. A carriage ran like the wind, over the paved roads of the imperial capital Arwentar. The magical beast that pulled the luxurious carriage had 8 legs, it was a sleipnir. A pair of skilled-looking warriors occupied the driver's seat, while above the carriage's cabin, in a place modified from a cargo rack, were 4 magic casters and bow-wielding warriors, vigilantly watching their surroundings. The reason why such an excessive detachment of security personnel, like a mobile defensive formation, was traveling so boldly over the roads was immediately obvious once one saw who rode in the carriage. Anyone with the slightest bit of academic knowledge would immediately recognize the emblem of 3 crossed staves on the side of the carriage, and from there they would know who it belonged to and who rode within it. That was why the knights on guard duty by the roadside did not stop the carriage and its passengers for questioning. There were 3 men in the carriage. All of them were dressed in long robes, and they looked like magic casters. All 3 of them were renowned individuals within the Empire's magical society, but their attitudes showed the distinct differences in their status. The most highly placed of them was a white-haired old man. Just as Gazef Stronov was a famed warrior, when one spoke of magic casters, nobody's name echoed across the surrounding nations like this man did. This old man was the Empire's most powerful grand magic caster, Triarch's Flutter Paradine. Seated opposite Flutter were his adept disciples, who could use the 4th tier of magic. After leaving the Imperial capital, an air of silence had filled the interior of the carriage. As though unable to bear the crushing pressure, one of his disciples nervously asked, "Master, what about His Majesty's orders?" Silence filled the carriage once again, but only for a moment. Flutter replied in a calm, inscrutable voice, "This is His Majesty's will, and as his vassal I must investigate. However, doing so through magic is far too dangerous. We ought to start with researching the archives, then summon demons to gather information." "So that means you don't know either, Master?" Flutter closed his eyes, then opened them a few seconds later. "Unfortunately I have been too long isolated, and I have never heard of a mighty fiend named Jaldabaoth. A month ago, an army of demons had assaulted the kingdom's capital. According to the information obtained, their commander Jaldabaoth, and the maid demons attending him were incomprehensibly fearsome beings. This demonic disturbance had caused the Empire's Night Corps, which invaded the kingdom every year, to stay put. Normally, it was perfectly sensible in warfare to attack a beleaguered foe. However, the fact was that there were two main reasons for the Empire to make war upon the kingdom. One of them was to indirectly